Welcome, class, to this chapter on locating support materials. This particular video goes hand in hand with the next video chapter on how to find support materials, but also how to select them for your speeches. I do want to remind you, for your informative and your persuasive speeches, you need to have research verbally cited along with research in your outline that supports your topic. So let's look at the overview of this particular chapter, and you can follow it along in your book as well. This chapter, we're looking at how to find information. Here's the overview of what the PowerPoint covers. I do want to remind you, and I encourage you to use the library guide link for this class, which gives you an overview or easy access on how to conduct research or find information for your speech. So let's first look at what does the internet have to offer to you. Let's just quickly go through this information because I know that many of you have had this in English 101 or even English 102, but it's always good information to know. And also there'll be a video quiz, 5-question quiz pertaining to this chapter too. So search engines, as we know, we have general search engines such as Google, Yahoo, Bing, meta search engines, Dogpile, Excite, and then Google Scholar is a good search engine, as you see here, to use to find research material for your speeches. How do we evaluate internet sources? We know that the internet does not have a gatekeeper. There's not a person, an editor, who says this is good, non-biased information. So you need to be the gatekeeper, and you need to check the sources for accuracy, responsibility, that they're impartiality, that definitely they're non-biased. Be aware too of the date of when the research has taken place and how current the internet site is. Commercial websites, we know .com is a commercial website. .com is a questionable one. MSNBC.com is a good site to go to find information, but remember, a commercial persuades, and that means they have an agenda. So it may not be truly accurate information that you could reiterate in your speech or cite in your speech. Nonprofit organizations, again, that's a .org. Heartassociation.org is a good, reliable source, but let's say Greenpeace.org, which is the protection of our environment, of many environmental areas, they may have an agenda. They may have information, again, that is promoting their particular organization. So again, be careful about that. You could use them as a starting site. If you find that you're not sure if it's accurate 100% information, back it up with a written source. A blog, as we know, is not used for research, but it's good just to find some public opinion. Maybe if you have an idea for a speech. So let's say I want to do a persuasive speech about, do not texting while driving, and perhaps you find some blogs where people have written personal experiences, and then you could take that information and then do research and find research information that supports whatever that blog has given you an idea about. Personal websites, the same thing, as we know. It's just a good starting point for you for when you're starting your speech. How can you use the internet to access libraries? Well, guys, again, you need to click on the library guide on how to conduct your research for your speeches. It's a link at the top of your nav bar. And here I have in that library guide different ways for you to find information. You can do your research in the middle of the night. You have access to many databases, and you have access to our library and other libraries in the area. So the PowerPoint and your textbook continues to look at the catalog, which many libraries don't have anymore. However, we see that you could have the catalog, the Library of Congress, which is a catalog, physical catalog that you can, in a sense, look at, but obviously that is online as well. Databases, multiple subjects, specialized. Hack has ProQuest, EBSCOhost are some of the most popular ones, and I highly recommend that you use them. If you have any questions on how to use them, see me, talk to me, see me during my office hours, or go to the Learning Center and they can help you how to do research, or go to the library and the librarian will help you. Books are considered extremely reliable, as we see here. The written word is the gospel. So we know that when we see it in a book, it's got to be true, right, guys? So make sure that you do use books or the thought of using books. Newspapers, good newspapers. The National Enquirer is a newspaper, is a periodical, but we know it's a bunch of garbage compared to the New York Times, which has good investigative reporting. So again, consider which newspaper you're using. Magazines, and you'll see this in the LibGuide, I have a category for popular magazines such as Cosmopolitan, Sports Illustrated, compared to scholarly magazines or scholarly journals. And I would prefer that you use, or I want you to use, the scholarly journals. Cosmopolitan is a great magazine, however, it's not a good source for research for your speech. And we see here we have our journals, our academic and professional. Again, highly credible. I would, again, highly recommend that you use a journal in your speech. What can you find both on the internet and in the libraries? Well, as we know, we have government sources. We can find a lot of statistical information, facts, practical information. .gov, and I'll go back to that. As you see here is a great source to find government work. Reference Works, as you see here, is another great place to begin your research. In the library, or in the library site, you see something called facts.com, and that can help you kind of come up with a topic or an idea. If you're kind of thinking, hey, no, I want to do a speech about global warming, but I'm not quite sure what I want to speak about. So maybe you just put that in facts.com and see what comes up, and maybe something would spark your interest. Excuse me about that. Let's see if we can get rid of that. There we go. Okay, how can you gather support materials in an interview? If you choose to interview an expert in the field, or you choose to gather information, as far as preparing for the interview, obviously you set up a time and location. You want your questions written out beforehand. You want to decide how to record. Sometimes people bring a tape recorder, and you have to ask permission of the other person. As far as recording, you could use your phone perhaps, but again, you need the permission of the person that you're interviewing. Obviously, we want to be professional, prepared. You want to be considerate, and you want to think about some follow-up questions. You also want to think about what type of questions you're going to be using. Are you going to be using closed-ended or open-ended questions? Obviously, open-ended questions leave room for very much like paragraph statement type of responses, where closed-ended are yes or no, where you can tally the data. How can you gather support materials with a survey? As you see here, just as I mentioned about closed-ended questions, surveys are excellent as far as when a person can complete them at their leisure. We have SurveyMonkey online if you want to do a more elaborate survey, or obviously you can put together a survey in writing. As you see here, decide what information you want to collect. Clear, appropriate language. I always tell students that write out your surveys, put it down, go play go away for a couple hours, play ball, do something, go to the Y, come back and read your survey as if you are the person taking the survey, and to be sure that the questions are clear and appropriate in what you're looking for in that particular survey. Let's go back here. Conducting the survey, individuals who represent population subgroups. In other words, your girlfriends that you meet in the commons, and they're all 22-year-olds, and they're all going to Hack, and they all major in education, are not a good cross-reference. So you want folks who represent different population groups. Survey a large enough sample and factor in the location. You know, if you're just on a college campus, you know, folks are in a sense related to education, so you want to become a little more diverse with your survey. How do you take good research notes? So as you're researching, you know, you want to come up with some type of system that works for you. Here's a checklist, but again, you want to be sure that you have a system that is appropriate for you. That's what I usually tell students. However, you can follow the PowerPoint or the chapter's suggestion. Know the appropriate style manual. Now, for your speeches, you will verbally cite your sources. Okay, you're going to tell us where the source came from, the date of the source, and the title. So for instance, if you were using, let's say, Time magazine, and there was an article last week on global warming and how it's affecting the polar bear population, you would verbally cite it by saying, according to Time magazine, in last week's issue, in an article entitled How Global Warming is Affecting the Polar Bear Population, these facts were stated, yada, yada, yada. That's what you say in your speech. It's important to give us the source, the date of the source, as I said last week, or more particular, you might say the date, and the title. In your outline, at the end of your outline, you'll cite your sources in MLA, Modern Language Association style. APA is used for psychology class. If you had to do a presentation or a paper for psychology class, and also the communications department uses MLA style. And again, in that LibGuide, that library guide, I have a source for you where you can find how to easily put your information, your research into MLA format. Or you can get a nifty book, as you see here. Perhaps you bought one for English 101. And that's it for Chapter 3, Locating and Supporting Materials. Again, I want to reiterate the importance of finding credible, reliable sources, research, and we know what research is. Research is when an organization or a person conducts some type of information gathering system, you know, using many different groups or surveys, and they gather this data and they calculate this data and then they produce it as research. And it has to be from a credible source, from a credible organization or an expert in the field. And your source to find this are in journals, scholarly journals, and books, incredible internet sites, credible, and it's difficult to, you have to be the gatekeeper with the internet sites, good newspapers, investigative newspapers. For your persuasive speech, you'll need at least 2 to 3 cited sources, and I ask that they come from 2 different mediums, meaning you need 1 journal and maybe a book, or 2 books and a journal. You just need a difference there. You can't just have 3 books. And that's about it. And I will see you in class then.